Hello, everybody, and welcome. It's the Wednesday night edition of Inside the Headset. We're live and on the air, and we're going to start it off down where the leaves are turning and beautiful, and we're going to start it off with the Hall of Fame head coach with 473 wins, head coach Gary Rankin. How you doing tonight, Coach?
Dork, I'm great, thank you.
Well, you got a record of 6-2. And came away with a big win last Friday night against Notre Dame and won 42-0. Talk a little bit about that, as you said, 6-2 going into Week 9.
Well, everything's relevant, I guess. You know, we're 6-2, and people are pretty wired up around here, pretty fired up, and 6-2 at Alcoa will probably get you fired. So it just depends where you're at and what's going on, but. We played probably our best game the other night, especially offensively. We've been, like I said before, we've been pretty good defensively all year. Offensively, we've been up and down, and execution just hasn't been as smooth and consistent as I would like. But the other night was probably our best all-around game. The kids played pretty clean, played pretty well, and it looked like we were coached and we were doing what we were supposed to do. So it looked like a football team that you wanted to look like.
Well, and when you said at this point and coaching this team for the first season and everything, do you like where you are? I mean, are you where you thought you would be?
We're 6-2, and we were in the other two games. One of them we were throwing for the end zone, and the other one probably a little better team than us. But we hung around with them for a long time going into the fourth quarter. So. Yeah, I'm pretty proud of where we are. It's been a process. It's been a long haul. Some things besides just X's and O's and getting to know our kids and them getting to know me and what the expectations are. And that's the biggest thing about turning the program around. It just takes a little bit of time, and we're not mature in a lot of places, and we're not experienced in a lot of places, and that's two things you can't speed up sometimes. So. But I really like where we are. Kids have done well. They bought into everything we're trying to do, and it's been a pretty good change for them.
Well, and, a lot of people do not realize, but, it's you're new to them. They're new to you, and, and maybe some of them thought that they knew certain things about football, but it's about doing it the way you want them to do it, because you have a process. You want them to follow the process, and at times they may seem like, well, why are we doing this, or why are we going down
right.
And certain people don't understand. You've got a great recipe, Coach. I mean, you know what you're doing, and sometimes you have to explain to a kid. Sometimes I know you think you should be playing this position, but that's not your position.
It's a process, and it's all about the team first and foremost, and it's not just and people ask that question many times about the private kids versus the public school kids, and I think all of them are entitled to a certain degree these days, and it's important to me that they realize that it is a team game. It's about the team, and anybody that don't believe that in our program can go play in the offensive line for a couple of weeks, and then they'll really see what dedication and courage and everything you're doing for the team means. So that's been a good part I think they bought into, and it takes us all. It takes all the coaches, all the players. It's not a one-man show. It's not a three-man show. So I think we're starting to develop that team togetherness and to a little bit and understanding you got to play for each other and how important it is.
Well, I want to kind of break it up right here before we start talking about your next opponent and everything. We did the Battle of the Borough last Friday night and everything, and Cecil Joyce with the Daily News Journal did turn out a really sweet article about what they called the Fabulous 50, but I wanted to talk to you about 1994 and that team, and before we get started, I mean, these are some guys that played for Coach Rankin. The team includes numerous college football signees, the likes of future Alabama defensive back Fernando Bryant, Vanderbilt running back Alvin Duke, and offensive line, and help me pronounce this, David Copians. Copians?
David Coppins.
All right.
David Coppins.
All right, David Coppins. And University of Tennessee standout, Gerald Griffin. Peoples was at Sanford, and defensive back Corey Carney. But Corey Carney was really, and I didn't know this, somebody educated me, he was a dual threat quarterback, but he could keep linebackers honest. But can you just take us down that 1994 team that you coached at Riverdale for a minute?
Well, and it's different eras and stuff, but some people will try to tell you that's one of the best teams to ever come out of the state of Tennessee. We certainly had some great players. Our secondary was SEC signees at every position. It was a year we only gave up 54 points on the year, and I think our defense scored 80-something. So it's pretty unusual when your defense scores more points than they give up. It was a team that was loaded with big-time players, and it was a great team. The first state championship that Riverdale was able to bring home, and we lost a lot of people off of that team the next year, but that's when I realized what tradition meant a little bit and what momentum meant a little bit, because we sort of got on a track there and kept that thing running. But it was one of the great teams in Tennessee history. There's no doubt about that. And you play 15 games and give up 3 points a game. That's pretty stout. Some great players on that team, and like I say, there was a lot of college athletes and college players on that team.
When you're coaching that many those kids like that, and knowing that they're going to go on and play at the next level and everything, right. And you're watching them as they progress through the season and just continue to, just shine on the field and outplay right. kids that won't be going to college. And I don't want to mean that in a bad flavor, but it's just amazing to watch as those kids accelerate up and down the field.
Well, it actually started the year before, Stuart. We got in the state championship game in '93.
Okay.
With all those kids, we got beat by a great Lincoln County team in the Clinic Bowl at that time. I think it was 21-14.
Louis Thompson,
and it was a good ball game, but they were certainly the better team a little bit. But we had 19 of those 22 starters coming back the next year.
Wow.
I mean, I knew when we walked out of that stadium that night that we had a great chance of getting back there the next year. So I tried to do my research and tried to study a little bit about having that experience of a football team coming back and how do you really handle that. So I think every season is a little bit different. We were not quite as physical in practice with that bunch. It was a mature team. It was a team that, like I say, had 19 of them had started in the state championship game before. And we knew we were going to be really, really good. Now, I didn't know if we'd win it all, but I thought we had a great chance to get back. And, we did a good job of handling those kids.
When you talk about that not being as physical, you're talking about running through that routine of practice where you'll get everything you done in an hour and 30 minutes. You don't need 2 hours and 45 minutes of practice, do you, Coach?
And those kids were physical. They had been through the wars. The worst thing we could do is take them out there every week and get them beat up. Now, we worked hard. Granted, we worked hard. But I think some of the physicality and some of the tackling drills were probably not as much and as tough as we had to be, because we had some established football players coming back.
Right.
It wasn't a situation where we were trying to find. We were trying to find 2 or 3 starters, but we knew what we had. We had the best horse in the race, and there wasn't any reason to go out there, and train them into the ground. So I think there's a little bit of art of that every year. What kind of football team? Here, I've had to be a lot harder on mine. I mean, we weren't a very mature football program when I rode into this place. Wasn't really experienced in some areas, and that's been something that's been a little bit difficult to overcome. But I think every team, every situation has different problems and different things you've got to approach, and every year is certainly different. But that was a different year. It was a gratifying year. One of the best years that Riverdale certainly ever had, and probably the best team that they've ever had.
Another kid you coached, Brian Davis, a big dual threat quarterback that could really sling it down the field. He was one of the fabulous 50. He was a Mr. Football, and played a little bit at MTSU and at Cumberland, didn't he, Coach?
He did, and I think probably, I'm not sure if he was the first one, but we had a kid win the Mr. Football Award there at Riverdale, and it might have been the first one. I'm not sure, but we retired his jersey, and next thing you know, we were having one in the running every year and winning one every year. So, but Brian Davis was one of the most strong-armed kids quarterbacks that I've been around in my coaching career. Just a great kid. Went to MTSU, and just a great quarterback.
You had Eugene Gorey, and I saw a little bit of Eugene Gorey. I mean, if this guy walks in McDonald's, everybody's hitting the floor, Coach. This guy is a goon.
Big guy.
He is a goon.
Big guy. And, I didn't count it. I saw that article, and I read a little bit of it and went through it pretty fast. I don't know how many Riverdale kids we had on that top 50, but it was an impressive list. And, there's been some great football players come out of Rutherford County, and there's still great football players. There's plenty of talent there. At that time there was only 2 schools, so you were going to have a lot of talent on those teams. And not only those 11 we had on the field, we had plenty of depth back in those days. I guess with the emergence of so many high schools in town, there's still so many athletes in there. Maybe not as deep as they've been back at that time, but still just tremendous athletes coming out of Rutherford County.
You had Ralph King, Eric Locke. I mean, the list goes on, Coach, that Gaston Miller, I remember Gaston when he played. I mean, these guys, Kenny McGowan, Joe Peebles played there. Of course, that was a little bit before you arrived. But Arian Peebles, you had him, and he wasn't too bad. And then you had Dave Thomas, and you can't forget Dave and Ladarius Verge. The list goes on, Coach.
It does. Just so many great players, and like I said, I was fortunate to come in there at that time and be able to coach those kind of guys. And with some of the coaches, I had an all-star staff there at times.
Jimmy Maynard was there.
Jimmy Maynard was there. I had an all-star staff. At one time in the last 10 or 12 years, I think 10 of those guys were head coaches around the state. So I was very fortunate when I got there to be able to reel in some great coaches, and I had great administrative support from Mr. Watson, our principal, and it was just at that time period, it was one of the best places in the state for sure to coach football. Yeah,
and we talked about Tom Nolan, and you ended up a little bit in his regime, and there's a guy that he get on that intercom. He led with River. He was a warrior through and through, wasn't he, Coach?
Well, it started with Hewlin Watson. I mean, when I first got there, the pep rallies were at that school was legendary. I mean,
really,
we would spend $1,000 on a pep rally in a heartbeat.
Wow!
And have light shows, and Channel 4 came in and taped some of our pep rallies. But without a doubt, those pep rallies at Riverdale High School were some of the greatest pep rallies that I've ever seen or been around.
Wow!
A lot of school spirit at that time, and like I say, Hewlin Watson was responsible for that. He started that, and it just grew and grew. And Brooke White was in charge of cheerleaders then, and Miss Dodson. So we had some great people that we worked with, and it was just a phenomenal place in the time period I was there. Phenomenal.
Well, we appreciate you delving back into history. We better get back up here, 2022. But thank you so much. I definitely appreciate that, and I know the fans do also. Your road gets a little bit tougher, Coach, because Friday night you face Webb and they're 7-0 or 8. They're good,
and they're probably one of the top 3 or 4 teams in our division in the state. There's no doubt it's Lipscomb and CPA and maybe Luzanne, and Webb's right up there with them.
Right,
it's a tall challenge for us, not only with their athletes and what's going on with their football team right now, but we were told today they're having Dave Metzke night. And, Dave's the coach there and been there for 35 years. He's retiring this year. So we really didn't need that extra motivation for them going into their place. But I think there's supposed to be a tremendous crowd there. Coach Metzke's one of the great coaches in the history of our state.
Really?
One of the most respected coaches in the history of our state in the private league. Chad Pennington that played for New York Jets played for him. I think he's going to be there. So it's a big night at Webb High School, and it'd be nice to go in there and spoil a little bit of that, but we're certainly a pretty big underdog, and we know that.
Well, Coach, and you're on the road, as you said, and it's going to be tough for the Bucks. But you're looking forward to the challenge, I'm sure, because playoffs is right around the corner, and you'll come back and you'll have Grace Academy, and they're struggling a little bit, but still yet though, it's all about preparing right now for to get ready for the second season, is it not? I mean,
and it's not only that, but it's preparing our program. We're in the process of still preparing, and I told our kids today, we're getting ready for Webb, but we're getting ready for next year. We're getting ready for the year after. We're trying to build our program every day that we practice and everything that we do. So, we've got 2 games left in the regular season, and both of them will be a challenge for us. We'll start the playoffs, but I feel good. We played a lot of young kids. We've started 3 or 4 freshmen during the year. So I feel like we've done the things that we need to do to try to get our program back on stable ground so we're competitive year in and year out. And, we've gotten off to a good start with that.
Coach, I can't thank you enough, as always, for being on Inside the Headset. Good luck as you go into battle, and tell the kids play hard and watch the penalties and just don't turn that ball over.
Appreciate it, Stuart. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Coach.